Part 1. The Fire That Changed Everything. No one in the town of Greywick ever forgot the night the Blackwood house burned. Even years later, people still spoke about it in lowered voices, as if the fire itself might hear them. They remembered the way the sky turned red above the northern hills. They remembered the smoke rising like a dark hand into the stars. They remembered the screams, the bells, the rain that came too late. But most of all, they remembered the boy, a 6-year-old child named Elias Blackwood, the only survivor. When the first villagers reached the house, there was almost nothing left. The roof had collapsed. The windows had melted into strange black shapes. The old wooden walls, once proud and tall, had become burning skeletons against the night. Inside were the bodies of his parents, his mother, Clara, his father, Adrian, and his older sister, Leora. But Elias was not inside. They found him almost 1 mile away, standing alone in the middle of the forest road, barefoot, silent, covered in ash, not crying, not shaking, not burned. There was not a single wound on his body, only one strange mark on his left wrist, a black symbol burned into his skin like an ancient seal, 3 circles inside a broken crown. When the old village doctor saw it, his face went pale. He touched the boy's wrist with trembling fingers and whispered words no one else could hear. Then he looked toward the burning house and said, "This child was not meant to survive." Elias did not remember the fire. That was what everyone said at first. He was too young, too shocked, too broken by grief. But the truth was stranger than that. Elias remembered everything before the fire. He remembered his mother singing while making bread in the kitchen. He remembered his father teaching him how to carve small animals from wood. He remembered Leora chasing him through the garden with a red ribbon in her hair. He remembered the smell of rain on the fields. He remembered the sound of the old clock in the hallway. But the night of the fire was empty, a black hole in his mind. No screams, no flames, no last words. Only one thing remained. A voice. Low, cold, almost gentle. "You were hidden for a reason." For years, Elias heard that voice in his dreams. Sometimes it whispered from behind locked doors. Sometimes it came from the smoke. Sometimes it sounded like his father. Sometimes it sounded like someone who had been dead for centuries. After the tragedy, Elias was taken in by a widow named Mara Vale, who lived at the edge of Greywick. She was not family, but she had known his mother long ago. She raised him quietly, away from questions, away from pity, away from the eyes of people who stared too long at the mark on his wrist. Mara was kind, but she was afraid. Elias noticed it even as a child. She locked the doors before sunset. She covered the windows during storms. She never allowed candles to burn after midnight. And whenever Elias asked about his parents, she gave him the same answer. "They loved you. That is all you need to know." But it was not enough, because every year on the anniversary of the fire, something strange happened. At exactly midnight, Elias would wake up. The room would be freezing. The air would smell of smoke. And the mark on his wrist would burn. Not like pain from a wound. Like something inside it was waking up. On his 10th birthday, Elias asked Mara the question for the first time. "Why did I survive?" Mara dropped the cup she was holding. It shattered across the wooden floor. For a moment, she did not move. She only looked at him with eyes full of something worse than sadness. Fear. Then she knelt in front of him, took his face in both hands and said, "Never ask that question again." But Elias did ask. Not aloud. Not to her. He asked it every night in silence. "Why did I survive? Why did the fire take everyone except me? Why do I have this mark? And why does it feel like someone is still watching me?" As Elias grew older, the town changed around him, but the whispers never disappeared. Children avoided him. Adults stopped speaking when he entered shops. Some called him cursed. Some called him lucky. One old man crossed himself every time Elias passed by. But Elias learned to live with silence. He became quiet, observant, patient. He learned that people reveal more when they think no one is listening. And over time, he began to notice things. Small things. A stranger standing across the street too long. Footprints beneath his window after rain. Letters arriving for Mara that she burned before reading. A locked chest beneath her bed. A name she once whispered in her sleep. Adrian, forgive me. That was his father's name. On the night Elias turned 17, everything changed. A storm rolled over Greywick, heavier than any storm the town had seen in years. Thunder shook the hills. Rain hammered against the roof. The roads became rivers of mud. Elias woke before midnight, not because of thunder, because someone was inside the house. He opened his eyes in the darkness and listened. One step, then another. Slow, careful. Not Mara. Elias reached for the small knife he kept beneath his pillow. The floor creaked outside his room. His door opened. A tall figure stood in the doorway. Black coat, wet boots, face hidden beneath a hood. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the stranger whispered, "Elias Blackwood." Elias gripped the knife. "Who are you?" The stranger stepped closer. "I am someone who knew your father." Elias felt his chest tighten. "My father is dead." "Yes," the stranger said, "and he died keeping you alive." Before Elias could speak, the mark on his wrist began to burn. The stranger saw it, even in the dark. He froze. Then he whispered, "So it's true." At that exact moment, Mara appeared behind him with a lantern in one hand and an old pistol in the other. "Get away from him." The stranger slowly turned. "Mara Vale," he said. "Still hiding ghosts?" Mara's face went white. "I said get away from him." The stranger did not move. "You should have told him." Mara raised the pistol. "He was a child." "He is not a child anymore." Elias looked between them. "What is he talking about?" Mara said nothing. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather book. The moment Mara saw it, her expression changed completely. "No," she whispered. The stranger threw the book onto Elias's bed. "Your father wanted you to have this when the mark awakened." Elias looked down. The leather was old, black, and cracked by time. On the cover was the same symbol burned into his wrist. 3 circles inside a broken crown. Then the window exploded. Glass flew across the room. The lantern went out. Something black rushed through the storm. Mara screamed. The stranger pushed Elias to the floor. A blade flashed in the darkness. For the first time in his life, Elias remembered the fire. Not all of it. Only one image. His father standing in front of a door. Blood on his shirt. His mother crying. Leora holding Elias's hand. And behind them, men in black masks, the same symbol on their gloves. 3 circles. A broken crown. Elias opened his eyes on the floor of his room. Rain blowing through the shattered window. The stranger was fighting someone in the dark. Mara was shouting his name. "Elias, run!" But Elias could not move. The leather book lay beside him. The mark on his wrist burned so badly, he thought his skin would tear open. And then the voice returned. The same voice from his dreams. Low, cold, almost gentle. "You were hidden for a reason." Elias grabbed the book. He ran. Down the stairs. Through the kitchen. Out into the storm. Behind him he heard shouting. A gunshot. Mara's voice. Then silence. He ran into the forest, barefoot like the night he had been found as a child. Branches cut his face. Mud swallowed his feet. Rain blinded him. But he kept running. Because for the first time in 11 years, Elias understood something. The fire had not been an accident. His family had not simply died. They had been hunted. And now, the hunters had found him. When dawn finally came, Elias stood on the hill above Greywick. The storm had passed. The town below was quiet. Smoke rose from Mara's house, just like it had risen from the Blackwood house years before. Elias opened the leather book with shaking hands. On the first page, written in his father's handwriting, were 7 words. "If you are reading this, they have returned." Elias turned the page, and beneath it was a sentence that changed his life forever. "Your name is not Elias Blackwood." He stared at the words until the world around him seemed to disappear. His name was not Elias Blackwood. His life was a lie. His family had died for a secret, and somewhere in the darkness, someone knew the truth. Elias closed the book. The mark on his wrist no longer burned, pulsed, like a heartbeat, like a warning, like something ancient had finally opened its eyes. And for the first time since the fire, Elias did not ask why he had survived. He asked a different question. Who was he really? Part 2. Someone is watching. The sun rose over Greywick as if nothing had happened. Birds sang. Mist drifted across the fields. Farmers began opening their barns. Children chased each other through the narrow streets. Life continued, but for Elias the world had ended before dawn. He remained hidden among the pine trees overlooking the town. From where he stood, he could see smoke still rising from Mara's cottage. People were gathering outside, pointing toward the burned building. He wanted to run back. He wanted to know if Mara had survived. But something deep inside warned him not to move. His father's journal rested heavily inside his backpack. The words on the first page echoed endlessly inside his mind. Asterisk, if you are reading this, they have returned. Asterisk, asterisk, your name is not Elias Blackwood. Asterisk, every answer he had believed about his life had collapsed in a single night. Who had returned? Who were the masked men? Why had his father lied about his own son's identity? And who had truly died in the fire 11 years ago? Taking a slow breath, Elias finally opened the second page. The handwriting was unmistakably Adrian's. Strong, steady, confident, unlike the frightened man Elias had imagined during all these years. His father had expected this day. To my son, if these pages are in your hands, then I have already failed. I could not protect you forever. The people searching for you have finally found your trail. If Mara is alive, trust her. If she is dead, I am sorry. None of this was ever meant to become your burden. Your real name must remain hidden until you understand why. Do not return to Greywick. Do not trust anyone wearing the symbol of the broken crown. And above all, never let them take you alive. Elias lowered the journal. His hands were trembling. Someone had hunted him since childhood. Someone powerful enough to wait 11 years before striking again. The realization settled heavily in his chest. He wasn't running from criminals. He was running from people who had planned this for over a decade. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. Not thunder, a branch snapping. Someone else was there. Elias slowly closed the journal. Every instinct told him not to turn around. Instead, he quietly slipped the book beneath his jacket. Another step. Closer. Leaves rustled. A shadow moved between the trees. Then a voice. You read faster than your father. Elias spun around. A young woman stood only 20 feet away. She wore dark traveling clothes covered by a long gray cloak. A bow rested across her shoulder. One hand remained far from her weapons, showing she meant no immediate harm. She couldn't have been older than 25. Her silver-gray eyes never left Elias. You've been following me. She nodded. For 6 hours. Why? To make sure they didn't find you first. Elias tightened his grip on the knife. Who are you? My name is Nora. That's not what I asked. She gave a faint smile. No, it isn't. Silence settled between them. Finally she spoke again. I knew Adrian. My father. Very well. Elias stepped closer. If you knew him, then tell me why he lied to me. Nora's expression changed. Not surprise. Sadness. He didn't lie. He protected you. By giving me a fake name? Yes. By hiding my past? Yes. By making me believe my family died in an accident? Her voice became quieter. Especially that. Elias could barely breathe. Every answer only created more questions. He pulled the journal from beneath his jacket. You knew this existed. I helped him write parts of it. What? He wanted someone else to remember. In case he couldn't. Elias stared at her. You expect me to believe that? No. I expect you to survive long enough to decide. She slowly reached into her pocket. Elias immediately raised his knife. Don't. She stopped, then carefully pulled out an old photograph. She tossed it onto the ground between them. It landed face up. Elias picked it up. His heartbeat stopped. The picture showed his parents, his sister, himself, but standing beside Adrian was Nora, much younger, smiling. His father had one arm around her shoulder. Written beneath the photograph were 4 words. Family isn't always blood. The date shocked him even more. It had been taken only 2 weeks before the fire. You really knew them? Nora nodded slowly. I loved them. Before Elias could respond, thud, an arrow struck the tree inches from his head. Nora instantly pulled him down. Move! Another arrow. Then another. 3 black-cloaked figures burst from the trees. No faces, only dark masks, and on each shoulder, the symbol, 3 circles, a broken crown. The journal, one of them shouted. Take the boy alive. Nora drew her bow with astonishing speed. Her arrow struck the first attacker before he could raise his weapon. The second charged. Elias barely dodged a swinging blade. Instinct took over. He grabbed a fallen branch and struck the attacker's arm. The knife dropped. The masked man smiled beneath his hood, almost as if he wanted Elias to fight. Then something impossible happened. The mark on Elias's wrist began glowing. Not bright enough to blind, just enough to pulse beneath his skin. Blue, cold, alive. The attacker froze. No, he whispered. It awakened. For a split second, everyone stopped moving. Even Nora looked shocked. What did you just say? Elias asked. The masked man took one slow step backward. His confidence had disappeared. Impossible. You were supposed to die. Before anyone could react, a whistle echoed through the forest. Every masked attacker immediately retreated. Within seconds they vanished into the trees, as though they had never been there. Only silence remained. Elias looked at his wrist. The blue light slowly faded. Nora stared at it in disbelief. I've never seen that happen. What is it? She hesitated. I don't know. You're lying. I know what your father believed. And he believed that mark wasn't a scar. Elias looked down again. It was a key. The word hung in the air. A key to what? I don't know. But Adrian spent years trying to find out. They continued walking deeper into the forest until evening. Neither spoke much. The further they traveled, the more isolated the landscape became. Mountains rose in the distance. Old abandoned roads disappeared beneath moss. Ruined stone bridges crossed forgotten rivers. Eventually they reached an abandoned watchtower overlooking an enormous valley. Inside, Nora lit a small fire. For the first time all day, Elias felt safe enough to think. He opened the journal again. Most pages contained maps, names, symbols, drawings of underground tunnels, old castles, forgotten monasteries. Then he found a folded letter hidden between 2 pages. Different handwriting. His mother's. My beautiful boy, if Adrian's plan has failed, then one day you will read these words. Please forgive us. None of this was your fault. You were born carrying something older than kingdoms. Something powerful enough to make good people become monsters. Never believe those who call you chosen. You are simply our son. And we loved you before anyone ever feared you. Remember one thing above all else. There is one place they can never follow. Your father called it the Hollow Sanctuary. Elias looked up. Nora. She was already staring at him. You know where that is? She slowly nodded. I hoped we'd never have to go there. Why? Because if Adrian hid something there, then the broken crown already knows it exists. Outside, far below the tower, several tiny lights suddenly appeared along the old mountain road. Torches, dozens of them, moving together, searching. Nora quietly extinguished the fire, then whispered only 4 words. They found our trail. As Elias looked down into the valley, he realized something terrifying. The men hunting him were no longer searching blindly. They knew exactly where he was going. And someone, somewhere, had betrayed them. Part 3. The truth hidden underground. The lights in the valley continued moving through the darkness. One by one, steady, patient, like hunters who already knew their prey had nowhere left to run. Elias counted them. 23 torches. 2 organized to be villagers. 2 disciplined to be mercenaries. They're surrounding the mountain, he whispered. Nora didn't answer immediately. She climbed the broken stairs to the top of the abandoned watchtower and looked toward the eastern cliffs. After nearly a minute, she returned. There are more. How many? Enough. Elias felt a chill despite the warmth of the fire that had burned only moments before. They know exactly where we're going. Nora nodded grimly. That means one thing. Someone told them. But who? I don't know. She looked toward Adrian's journal lying on the stone floor. But your father expected betrayal. They left the tower before sunrise. Instead of following the old road, Nora guided Elias through narrow mountain paths that hadn't been used in decades. The climb became steeper with every mile. Jagged cliffs surrounded them. Cold wind roared through the rocks. Clouds drifted so low they seemed close enough to touch. Hours passed without a single word. Finally, Elias broke the silence. Tell me about my father. Nora smiled faintly. Which part? The truth. She took a long breath. Adrian Blackwood wasn't a farmer. I guessed that much. He only became one after you were born. What was he before? Nora stopped walking. He spent 15 years hunting the Broken Crown. Elias stared at her. Hunting them? He believed they were responsible for hundreds of disappearances across Europe. And were they? Yes. They existed long before kingdoms. Long before modern governments. They don't conquer countries. They collect people. People like me? Nora looked directly into his eyes. Especially people like you. By afternoon they reached the ruins. The hollow sanctuary, at least. What remained above ground. Ancient stone walls stretched across the mountainside. Broken arches pointed toward the sky. Massive statues lay shattered after centuries of earthquakes. Nature had reclaimed nearly everything. Trees grew through collapsed halls. Vines covered forgotten carvings. Only the enormous cathedral entrance still stood. Its iron doors were covered in rust. Yet the symbol above them remained untouched. 3 circles, surrounded by 12 stars. Not the broken crown. Something older. Elias stepped closer. His wrist immediately began to pulse. Not painfully, almost. Recognizing something, the doors slowly creaked open. By themselves. Nora whispered, I've never seen them open. Neither had to ask why. The sanctuary had opened. For Elias. Inside. Silence. Not ordinary silence. A silence so complete that even their footsteps seemed swallowed by the darkness. Dust covered everything. Massive columns disappeared into the shadows above. Ancient stained-glass windows had long since shattered. Only pale daylight filtered through broken ceilings. The air smelled of stone. And forgotten centuries. At the center of the cathedral stood a circular platform carved from black marble. Elias stepped onto it. The symbol on his wrist glowed again. This time, the floor answered. Golden lines spread across the marble like rivers of light. Ancient mechanisms hidden beneath the stone awakened. The ground trembled. Then, the platform began descending, deep underground. For nearly a full minute they descended in silence. When the platform finally stopped, Elias couldn't believe what he was seeing. An underground city, hidden beneath the mountain. Libraries, workshops, dormitories, gardens illuminated by shafts of natural light. Everything perfectly preserved, as though the people had simply vanished yesterday. This, Elias whispered, Is impossible. Nora slowly shook her head. No. This is history. The first room they entered contained thousands of books. Not ordinary books. Handwritten volumes. Maps. Ancient scientific diagrams. Star charts. Languages Elias had never seen. In the center stood a bronze statue. A man wearing armor unlike anything from any known civilization. His face had been damaged. But beneath the statue were engraved words. The keepers do not rule. The keepers protect. Elias frowned. Protect what? Nora looked around. I think. We're about to find out. Further inside, they discovered portraits. Hundreds of them. Men, women, children. Every generation stretching back centuries. Elias slowly walked past each painting, until he froze. One portrait showed a man who looked almost identical to him. Same eyes, same face, same dark hair. The painting was dated 1483. Another, 1271. Another, 963. Each face looked like Elias. Not similar, nearly identical. This can't be real. He whispered. Nora's voice barely escaped her lips. Oh God. Suddenly, the journal began vibrating. Pages flipped on their own, stopping at one folded document Adrian had hidden deep inside. Elias unfolded it carefully. It wasn't a letter. It was a family tree. Except, it didn't make sense. His own name appeared near the bottom. Above it, generation after generation. Every father looked exactly like him. For over 1,000 years. No changes. No differences. Only different names. Different centuries. One bloodline. One face. Nora stared at the document in horror. That's impossible. Elias looked at her. Why? Because genetics doesn't work like that. Before either could speak again, a voice echoed through the chamber. It wasn't genetics. Both spun around. An old man stood in the doorway. White hair. Long gray coat. No weapon. Only a wooden walking stick. His eyes rested calmly on Elias. I've waited a very long time to meet you. Nora immediately drew her knife. Who are you? The old man ignored her. Instead, he looked only at Elias. My name is Gabriel. I was your father's teacher. Elias felt every muscle tense. My father never mentioned you. He wasn't allowed to. Allowed by who? Gabriel smiled sadly. By me. For the next hour, Gabriel told them everything, or at least, everything he believed they were finally ready to hear. The mark on your wrist is not a curse. It is not magic. It is not a weapon. It is an inheritance. Thousands of years ago, a group known as the Keepers discovered something beneath this mountain. What? Gabriel hesitated. We still don't know. But whatever it was, changed them. The mark began appearing naturally among a single bloodline. Your bloodline. It wasn't created. It was born. Elias looked at his wrist. So why am I being hunted? Gabriel's expression darkened. Because centuries later, one group stopped protecting the secret. They wanted to control it. The Keepers divided. One side remained here. The other became the broken crown. Silence filled the chamber. Elias tried to process everything. So they've hunted my family. For generations? Gabriel nodded. They believe only someone carrying the original mark can open the final chamber. The final chamber? Gabriel looked toward a massive stone door at the far end of the underground city. Unlike every other entrance, it had no handle, no hinges, only the symbol burned into Elias's wrist. 3 circles, surrounded by 12 stars. The last vault. No keeper has entered it for over 800 years. Why not? Because no true heir has returned. Gabriel slowly pointed toward Elias. Until today. Before anyone could move, a deafening explosion shook the underground city. Stone rained from the ceiling. Bookshelves collapsed. Dust filled the air. Nora looked toward the entrance. They're here. Another explosion. Closer. Then shouting echoed through the tunnels. Dozens of voices. Boots. Weapons. The broken crown had found the sanctuary. Gabriel closed his eyes. I feared this day. He turned toward Elias. You must open the vault. Now. I don't even know what's inside. You don't need to. They do. Another explosion shattered the library doors. Masked soldiers poured into the underground city. Far more than before. Not dozens. Hundreds. Their leader slowly walked through the smoke. Unlike the others. He wore no mask. A tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He smiled the moment he saw Elias. After 11 years. He said quietly, the last heir finally came home. The man removed one black leather glove. On his own wrist was the exact same mark as Elias, but it was cracked down the middle, like something had broken inside it. Elias stared in disbelief. Who are you? The stranger smiled. A question your father hoped you would never ask. He took one slow step forward. My name is Lucian. Then he spoke the words that froze everyone in the chamber. I am your older brother. Part 4, the last secret. For a moment, no one moved. The explosions faded into the background. The shouting of soldiers became distant. Even the falling dust seemed to stop in the air. Elias stared at the silver-haired man. His older brother? That was impossible. He had grown up believing his only sibling was Leora, the sister who had died in the fire. My brother, Elias whispered. Lucian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Yes, you've been lied to your entire life. Elias shook his head. No. My parents had only 2 children. They had 3. Lucian's expression darkened. They simply stopped talking about me. Nora stepped in front of Elias. Don't listen to him. Lucian laughed softly. You still think Adrian was a hero? I knew your father better than anyone. He wasn't perfect, but he gave everything to protect Elias. Lucian's eyes flashed. He gave everything. Except the truth. The soldiers spread through the chamber, surrounding the keepers. No one attacked. Not yet. Lucian seemed interested only in Elias. Do you know why your father changed your name? Elias remained silent. Because the moment the broken crown learned your real identity. Your death sentence was written. Gabriel stepped forward. Enough. Lucian looked toward the old man. My teacher. My greatest disappointment. You betrayed everything the keepers stood for. Lucian slowly shook his head. No. I evolved beyond them. The keepers hid knowledge. I wanted humanity to use it. Gabriel answered calmly. Power without wisdom destroys civilizations. Lucian smiled. History is written by those willing to act. Elias looked between them. I don't understand. What is inside the vault? Neither man answered. Finally Gabriel spoke. The greatest mistake our ancestors ever made. Lucian corrected him. The greatest discovery. Suddenly Lucian reached into his coat. Not for a weapon. For another journal. Old. Weathered. Almost identical to Adrian's. He tossed it toward Elias. It belonged to our mother. Elias caught it instinctively. Open the last pages. His hands trembled as he turned through the brittle paper. Near the end. A letter. Written only weeks before the fire. My sons, if either of you reads this, then I have failed both of you. One of you was born carrying the complete mark. The other, only half. I prayed you would never become enemies, but I fear the choice has already been made. Forgive me, I chose to protect one child, and in doing so, I abandoned the other. Elias slowly lowered the journal. His eyes filled with disbelief. He looked toward Lucian. Our mother. Lucian nodded. She chose you. You were 6. I was 14. I watched them hide you. I watched them erase me. They told the world I had disappeared. They erased every photograph. They erased every record. They erased their own son. For the first time, Lucian's voice cracked, not with anger, with pain. I spent years believing they would come back for me. They never did. Silence filled the underground city. Even the soldiers lowered their weapons. Gabriel closed his eyes. Adrian believed you had already joined the Broken Crown. Lucian laughed bitterly. Not at first. I waited. For months. For years. No one came. So eventually, I accepted the only family still willing to take me. The Broken Crown. Elias felt his chest tighten. Everything he believed about his parents had become uncertain. Were they heroes, or had they made an impossible choice? Gabriel finally answered the question lingering in everyone's mind. When the mark awakened, your mother learned it had divided. The complete mark appeared on Elias. The incomplete mark remained with Lucian. Our oldest records warned that if both brothers stayed together, the vault would eventually open. So Adrian made a decision. He took Elias and left Lucian behind. Lucian whispered, "My own father abandoned me." Elias couldn't speak. He imagined a frightened 14-year-old boy watching his family disappear forever. The image haunted him. Lucian looked directly into his eyes. "Now tell me, if you were me, what would you have become?" Elias had no answer. Suddenly the mountain shook violently. Cracks spread across the stone floor. The enormous vault door began glowing. Both marks, Elias's and Lucian's, were responding to each other. Gabriel's face turned white. "No. It has begun." "What has?" "The vault recognizes both heirs." Lucian smiled. "Exactly as I planned." Without warning, he rushed toward Elias, not to attack, to grab his wrist. The moment their marks touched, a wave of blinding light exploded through the chamber. Every torch went out. Every weapon fell silent. Time itself seemed to freeze. Elias opened his eyes. The underground city had vanished. He stood inside an endless white space. No walls, no ceiling, only silence. Across from him stood Lucian. No soldiers, no Gabriel, no Nora, only the two brothers. "What is this?" Lucian looked around calmly. The place between memories. Before Elias could respond, images appeared around them. Not dreams. Real memories. Their mother holding both boys. Lucian teaching 6-year-old Elias how to climb trees. Their father laughing. Leora chasing both brothers through the fields. Elias gasped. "I remember." More memories followed. Birthdays, snowfalls, stories by the fireplace. Lucian had always been there. His childhood hadn't begun at 6. Someone, or something, had erased those memories. Lucian spoke quietly. "Father didn't only change your name. He changed your past." Then the memories shifted. The night of the fire. For the first time, Elias saw everything. His parents weren't running from flames. They were running from soldiers. The Broken Crown had surrounded the house. Adrian desperately tried sealing a hidden passage beneath the floor. Clara held Elias. Leora cried beside her. Lucian stood near the doorway. Then, Adrian made his decision. He looked directly at Lucian. "I'm sorry." He slammed the hidden stone door shut, leaving Lucian outside, leaving him with the attackers. The last thing Lucian saw was his father turning away. The memory shattered. Elias staggered backward. "No." Lucian's eyes were filled with tears. "Now you know. I wasn't stolen. I was abandoned." The white world disappeared. Both brothers returned to the underground city. Elias fell to one knee. He could barely breathe. Everything Lucian had said was true. Gabriel whispered. Adrian believed there wasn't enough time. Lucian answered coldly. He still chose. The vault door slowly opened. Not completely. Just enough for a deep golden light to pour into the chamber. Warm, ancient, almost alive. Every person present instinctively looked toward it. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, a voice echoed from within the vault. Not loud, not frightening. Simply, old. Older than language itself. Older than history. It spoke only one sentence. Only one heir may enter. Asterisk asterisk. The golden light suddenly divided. Half flowed toward Elias. Half toward Lucian. Both marks began burning brighter than ever before. The vault had made its choice. Not one brother. Both. But only one. Would leave alive. Part 5. The last vault. No one dared to breathe. The golden light pouring from the last vault illuminated every face in the underground city. The soldiers of the broken crown stood frozen. The remaining keepers stared in silent disbelief. Gabriel lowered his head. Nora slowly stepped toward Elias but stopped herself. She knew this was no longer a battle anyone else could fight. It had always been about the two brothers. The voice echoed once more, deeper this time. Only one heir may complete the path. Asterisk asterisk. The massive stone doors opened wider. Beyond them, there was no treasure, no throne, no mountain of gold. Only a long bridge carved from white stone, suspended over an endless darkness. At the far end of the bridge stood a single pedestal. Resting upon it, a crystal sphere floated in midair, pulsed like a living heart. Slow, steady, ancient. The entire chamber seemed to breathe with it. Lucian smiled. So this is what they hid for 1,000 years. Gabriel answered quietly. No. They hid humanity from it. Elias looked toward the old keeper. What is it? Gabriel took a long breath. Our ancestors never named it. They only described it. The heart. A living intelligence that has existed beneath this mountain longer than human civilization. It does not grant power. It amplifies what already exists inside the one who touches it. Lucian laughed. So the stories were true. Gabriel nodded. A compassionate soul becomes capable of protecting nations. A cruel soul can destroy them. Lucian looked at Elias. You finally understand. This was never about ruling the world. It was about deciding who deserves to shape it. Elias slowly shook his head. No one deserves that. Lucian smiled sadly. That's exactly what Father would have said. The bridge began glowing. A narrow path of light stretched from the doorway to the crystal. The ancient voice returned. The heirs may enter. Asterisk asterisk. Only Elias and Lucian were able to step onto the bridge. The moment Nora tried to follow, an invisible force gently pushed her back. She watched helplessly. Elias. He turned toward her. For the first time since they had met, she smiled. No fear, no doubt, only hope. Come back. He nodded once, then continued walking. Halfway across the bridge, Lucian broke the silence. Do you hate them? Our parents. Elias looked ahead. I don't know. I wanted to. I tried. But after seeing Father's face, I think he hated himself more than either of us ever could. Lucian remained silent. Finally he whispered, I spent 20 years keeping myself alive with hatred. If I lose that, I don't know who I am anymore. Elias stopped walking. For the first time, he truly saw his brother. Not the leader of the broken crown. Not the enemy. Just a man who had spent half his life believing he had never been loved. I'm sorry, Elias said. Lucian laughed quietly. You didn't abandon me. No. But I inherited the life that should have been yours. They reached the pedestal together. The crystal floated between them. Within its surface, entire galaxies seemed to move. Stars were born. Stars died. Civilizations rose and vanished in moments. Neither brother reached for it. Instead, the crystal spoke. Not with words, with memories. Each brother saw every choice they had ever made. Every kindness, every lie, every fear, every regret. Nothing could be hidden. When the visions ended, the crystal glowed brighter. Then a new voice filled the vault. Neither seeks power. Asterisk asterisk. Gabriel's eyes widened. Impossible. The voice continued. One seeks justice. Asterisk asterisk. Golden light surrounded Elias. One seeks forgiveness. Asterisk asterisk. Silver light surrounded Lucian. The ancient intelligence had judged them, not by their blood, but by their hearts. Suddenly, a gunshot shattered the silence. Lucian's eyes widened. Blood slowly spread across his chest. Elias caught him before he fell. They both turned. Standing at the entrance of the bridge, one of Lucian's own commanders lowered a smoking pistol. His face twisted with rage. You've become weak. The broken crown doesn't need brothers. It needs rulers. Without hesitation, several soldiers joined him. They had no intention of obeying Lucian anymore. The betrayal had begun. Chaos exploded across the chamber. Keepers and broken crown soldiers clashed one final time. Nora fought beside Gabriel. The ancient library shook violently. Columns collapsed. The bridge itself began cracking. Lucian struggled to stand. I have to stop them. No, Elias said. You're wounded. Lucian smiled. So? We're brothers. It's what brothers do. For the first time in over 20 years. They fought together, back to back, just as they had unknowingly done as children while playing with wooden swords. Elias defended Lucian's blind side. Lucian shielded Elias whenever another soldier charged. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Some instincts survive even forgotten memories. The commander reached the crystal first. Laughing wildly, he grabbed it with both hands. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then, the crystal reflected everything inside him. Greed, cruelty, fear, hatred, power. The energy consumed him instantly. He didn't scream. He simply vanished, as though he had never existed. The chamber fell silent. The heart had made its judgment. The crystal slowly floated toward Elias and Lucian. This time, neither reached for it. Instead, both stepped backward. The ancient voice echoed one final time. The worthy reject dominion. Asterisk asterisk. The entire mountain began shaking. Gabriel suddenly understood. It's choosing. What? It's ending. The heart has never wanted masters. It wanted guardians. And today, it found them. The crystal rose toward the ceiling. Golden light flooded every tunnel, every wall, every ancient machine. For a brief moment, the entire underground city looked exactly as it had 1,000 years earlier. Filled with life, filled with keepers. Then, the light collapsed inward. The crystal shattered into thousands of tiny stars. Each disappeared into the sky above. Gone forever. The heart had chosen freedom. No one would ever control it again. Hours later, the sun rose over the mountains. The broken crown no longer existed. Without its purpose, its surviving members surrendered their weapons. Some disappeared into the world. Others remained to help rebuild what centuries of hatred had destroyed. Gabriel closed the last vault forever. This time, there would be no air waiting to reopen it. Lucian survived. Barely. Weeks passed before he could walk again. One evening, he and Elias stood together on the cliff overlooking the sanctuary. The mark, Lucian said, faded. Elias looked at his own wrist. The black symbol was disappearing. Slowly, like ink washed away by rain. It served its purpose. Gabriel joined them. Our ancestors believed the mark would disappear only when the choice no longer belonged to blood. It belongs to humanity now. Months later, Greywick held a memorial. Not for the fire, for the truth. The names of Adrian, Clara, Leora, and Lucian were carved together into a single monument. When Lucian saw his own name among the family he thought had erased him, he smiled through tears. They remembered. Gabriel quietly corrected him. No. They finally told the truth. As autumn arrived, Elias returned to the ruins of his childhood home. Nothing remained except the old stone chimney. He knelt where the front door had once stood. From his backpack he removed 2 journals. His father's, his mother's. He buried them beneath a young oak tree, not to hide the past, but to let it rest. Before leaving, he whispered into the wind, "I forgive you." No answer came. None was needed. Years later, travelers passing through Greywick often noticed 2 brothers rebuilding an old library on the northern hill. Few knew their names. Fewer still knew their story. Sometimes children asked why the building had no locks. Elias would smile and answer, "Knowledge should never be imprisoned." Lucian would quietly add, "Neither should people." The children never understood. But one day, they would. And somewhere far beyond memory, beyond kingdoms, beyond history itself, the last light of the heart disappeared among the stars. Not lost, not destroyed, simply free. Perhaps that had been its purpose all along. Not to create rulers, not to choose kings, but to remind humanity of a truth that every generation eventually forgets. The greatest power a person can possess is not the ability to control others. It is the courage to choose compassion when hatred would be easier. And that is why the story of Elias and Lucian was never truly about an ancient mark, or a hidden vault, or a forgotten order. It was about 2 brothers who were given every reason to become enemies, yet chose to become a family again. The end.